Hello, and welcome to the Women's Eye podcast. I'm your guest host, travel writer Laurie McAndish King. You may have heard my interviews before on the Women's Eye or read my travel books or articles. Thanks for joining us again today. This chat is the second in our travel series, talking with women who are passionate about getting out there, seeing the world, and having a positive impact. We're finding out how women can change the world through travel and how it can change us. Today, I'm talking with Naomi Duguid. She's a culinary guide, a writer, award-winning photographer, storyteller, and cook. And she's won 2 Cookbook of the Year awards from the James Beard Foundation. Hello, Naomi. Great to have you on the podcast. How are you? You're in Toronto?
Yeah, I'm in Toronto. Yeah, and it snowed this morning, and now it's just,
Cold.
it's not it's spring technically, but not spring actually, if you know what I mean.
Mhm. Mhm.
No complaints. I mean, April showers bring May flowers and all that.
I know, I love that. Here it's been hot. We got up into I think we're getting into the 80s tomorrow, so we're unseasonably warm. Figure. Anyway, great to see you again. We first met, I don't know if you'll remember this or not. We first met 2 or 3 years ago when you were on tour for your book, The Miracle of Salt: Recipes and Techniques to Preserve, Ferment, and Transform Your Food. Naomi writes beautiful, award-winning cookbooks that take us traveling and explore home-cooked foods through recipes, stories, and photographs. I can't wait to get into this with Naomi, but first, this episode is brought to you by the Casco Financial Group in Phoenix, Arizona. Casco President Catherine Scrivano started her business to help people like you create the financial strength to achieve their dreams. And speaking of dreams, I think you have a dream job. When I first heard Naomi speak, I was so impressed because, well, food, writing, travel, photography, these are all things I love. And you figured out how to pull them together in a unique way. I'm curious to know how your own culinary tour began. Was there a specific moment or experience that kind of sparked your passion for travel and food?
I have trouble with this term passion for travel. I mean, I just no, I mean, it's just sort of the world is out there, and I find it really interesting to try and understand how other people live, how other places function. I'm interested geopolitically, but I'm also kind of a bit of a geography geek in the sense that I like to go somewhere. It didn't start out as a food thing. It started out as well, I'm somewhere, say in Nepal. What's the terrain? Well, what grows here? Well, what do people grow? What do they eat of what's available? What food do they make from what they have? What food do I see there that they don't see as food? That's another really interesting question in a lot of places.
Oh my, that's
What,
surprising.
yeah, like there's, places where people don't eat fish, or places where people don't, there's fish in the lakes in Tibet, for example, but Tibetans generally are not fish eaters. That kind of thing. You think, okay, and what are they using? What are their tools? What tools do they have? What are they short of? What does that mean? So it was really soon for me clear that food is the way to understand so much, from labor and economics to social relations to, it's sort of an entryway that's anthropology. But I wasn't thinking in technical terms. I was just thinking, these are the questions that come up to me. And
Yeah.
so it's always, I mean, I just really like not knowing what's around the next corner. So that's what I would say is my interest, is having my eyes open and not knowing ahead. So I don't look at photographs ahead. I mean, now, the world is sort of so available online in all kinds of ways, but I used to look at a map, but not anything else, and think, it would be interesting to be at the base of the mountain. It would be interesting to be near the border, be interesting, that kind of thing, not what temples are there here or where. No, I don't want to have a preconceived notion, because that's going to lock me in. So that's
So interesting to me, Naomi,
all of
because
which is to say I'd not know.
yeah, it's the opposite of what in I'm a travel writer, so it's the opposite of the advice that's generally given to travel writers, which is sort of like figure out what everybody else has already written about this place and make sure that you understand that in context and figure out what you want to see ahead of time so you make sure you see all of it. So I love this flipping it around and just going and figuring out what's
Yeah, but there's a
there.
difference. But there's a difference because if you're a travel writer on assignment, you're delivering something for somebody
Right,
else.
right.
And me, I was always delivering something for me. So
Yeah.
when I'm delivering it for me, so my big thing is make sure I have enough time and a limited enough ambition that I'm not rushing around. Okay, so I can
Mhm.
hang around because it's when you hang around that you start to understand or get a glimpse of what's going on there. And for me, it's daily life that's what's going on there. I mean, yes, I'm going to go to the temple or I'm going to go to a museum, but that's not my first stop at all. My first stop is the tea shop or the bazaar, the market, because that's where you see interactions. And as an outsider, you can sort of just be a fly on the wall and be ignored, which is the other good thing. You want to be as you're never invisible as a foreigner, especially if you're outside Europe and you're white skinned, you're going to be visible, but people can forget about you if you're there often enough. They can take you for granted. And that's the valuable. Then you start to notice. Yeah.
So you specialize in a few locations, and they aren't the locations like going to Paris to experience the food there.
Lovely place.
They're uh, what kinds of talk to us a little bit about what kinds of places you go and maybe what you've learned from being a fly on the wall in those spots.
Well, in a long life, I've had time to go to various places, but it's returning to places that when you go back to somewhere, you often I've realized, oh, I see what I didn't understand before because it's changed in this way, and I didn't know that was brewing or things were like that. I mean, I'm just saying the over and over again thing is really it's a wonderful teacher if you can have that chance. And so I have spent quite a lot of time in Southeast Asia one way and another. And so with doing a book about Burma and earlier on with my ex, a book about mainland Southeast Asia, what's our salty sweet. And so I started to take once a year, take people do hands-on cooking and sort of culinary tours in northern Thailand and also in Burma for a while. And I'm not doing the Burma anymore. Burma's in the middle of a civil war and it's just horrible what's going on there. But really, northern Thailand, I'm still learning every time I'm there. It's really, and I have friends and it's just, it's a lovely, familiar place to return to, but I'm always still a beginner. I mean, that sounds silly, but it's true. And similarly, another place that's sort of on the edge, not a mainstream place, is the country of Georgia. And I was first there when it was part of the Soviet Union in '89. That's a long time ago.
Oh
And
boy.
then I went back again, starting in 2013, because I was working on a book about the Persian sort of culinary region. And Georgia, the Caucasus was part of that, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan. And then the Kurdish part of Iraq, and then Iran. And in Georgia, I felt very connected. And I went back. I used it as my jumping off point often for other travels in the region when I was working on the book. And since then have taken people to Georgia each year, usually in September. Um, and and that's really a pleasure, with of course a gap for the pandemic. It's really a pleasure because again, this layering of things where, oh yeah, sure I know, but actually what I learn each trip is all that I don't know. And then again and again, and it doesn't end. And that's really that's a lucky thing. I mean, Georgia's between Turkey and Russia. Um, it's a pretty fraught location. And it's a
Yes.
very interesting culture and a very old culture with layers of history. So there's lots there's Greek history and Pompey the Great was there. And I mean, it combines history that we know from Mediterranean with Central Asian history. So it's really a crossing over place, and has been invaded by many, and all of that. So that's really interesting to me. And the food culture there is really distinctive and incredible. And when I went in 89, I had no idea. I mean, I arrived on the train and the food was just so different. It was like an entirely different, what's the word? Taste vocabulary. It was really fascinating.
Really? I had no idea that it would be so different. What
No,
are
I mean, really, it's so if there's a Georgian restaurant near you that anybody thinks is a good place to go. I mean, it's just very interesting. Yeah.
what kinds of flavors do they have in Georgia?
Well, I mean, apart from the fact that it's one of the places that wine began, so it's got
Oh,
this
yes.
deep wine culture. So that's sort of, and fruit generally. The Caucasus is like a Garden of Eden. So
Mm.
they use tart fruit flavors, as they do in northern Iran as well. It's very interesting. And then there's a blue fenugreek, which isn't like fenugreek. It's called blue fenugreek. And now you can get it. It's imported into Kalustyan's has it, and it's in various other places. And coriander seed ground. And it's just the combinations. It's very forward and really lots of fresh herbs, lots of tarragon, for
Mm.
example, fresh tarragon. And it's just it's also this there's a culture of hospitality, and the table being a place where everyone spends a lot of time, and all the food is out there, and you're just eating from this and that, so that if there's a festive occasion at all, it's really quite interesting. It's informal in lots of ways, and yet the formality is that there's a certain formality around how you do toasts and so on, but the main thing is that there's plenty, like I'm saying, plenty. Even if it's not a wedding. If it's a wedding, they stack the dishes. You actually end up like this, and you think, really? Well, yeah, because it's important to show that you're being generous, and nobody's going to run out, right?
Well, speaking of that, all that food and local ways of doing things, one of the things that I think is so interesting about your food tours, and this is probably unlike almost any other ordinary tours, is that you actually take participants into people's homes to experience home cooking. How does that work?
Well, it's interesting. I in Georgia, I work with a friend in Georgia who's Georgian, who lives in Tbilisi, and she and I sort of coordinate, and we change our plans each year. We do some, I mean, we do follow some patterns, but we do different things. And she hears about people, and she'll approach them and say, "How can we come for dinner?" Or there's now a tradition of, as there's sort of ecotourism even in Italy, farmhouse sort of thing, where you can go to a
Yeah.
farmhouse and there will be a lunch, and it will be part of the sort of agroturismo stuff. Well, that goes on in other places. So we find it works out, I mean, that's really it. It's all by human contact. It's not by placing an order. It is very much my friend Tamar phones or we'll be in touch, and we're discussing things all the time. And now, thank heavens for, WhatsApp and other ways of communicating long distance. It's easy to
A
pick
lot
up,
easier, yeah.
talk to her in Tbilisi, 8 time zones away. It's incredible. So it's made things a lot easier than it used to be. Yeah.
How how do you think it's, I don't know, I hope this isn't a silly question, but how do you think it's different for people to learn about food in someone's home? Um, it's a very different experience. It's very intimate. It's very hands-on. It isn't like just going somewhere and going to the best restaurant you can find in the guidebook. What do your travelers get out of this that's different from what they might get on another kind of tour?
Well, I just think best restaurant is other people's taste. I mean, people like that. They like or what's the best, meal you ever had, or what's the best restaurant in name a city, and I don't I mean, I hate to say it like this so brutally, but I don't find that very interesting at all, because it's people's relationship to the food that's interesting. So the markets are the most interesting thing, and they're the direct, you watching people shop and what they're getting. And then if you're in someone's kitchen, or if you're in a farm kitchen where you're seeing things grow, you're seeing food processed. I mean, this is connecting the place with the culture, with necessity as well.
Mhm.
Because in a home kitchen, people are not wasting things, and it's not for show off, it's for living day to day.
Mhm.
And I think daily home cooking is, for me, the most interesting thing wherever I am. It's not it's sophisticated in its own way, in the sense that it's making um, best use, making very specific use of specifically
Everything.
available ingredients. And there's a form of frugality. I think frugality is an interesting thing. I don't mean
Huh.
tight-fistedness. I mean
Oh,
sensible, so that you roast the chicken and then you use the bones and you make the stock, and then it's
yeah.
it's that making best use in that way. And that's practice, and there's a real sophistication in that. And then,
Mhm.
there are good cooks and better cooks and less good cooks, that's a different thing, but that's just performance. But
Uh-huh.
but the food culture, how people think about it, what they expect of themselves and of their neighbors, and how they're doing it, that's really, to me, that's fascinating. Not to everybody, but
Mhm.
that's what, turns my crank, as they say. So yeah, so I mean, in Georgia, we do go to some nice restaurants, but we're more apt to go to a winery, and it's very low key, and um it's very home style cooking, and you're sort of sitting outside and seeing the food come. And yeah, it just feels more human scale, actually. I mean, a restaurant and chefing is an entirely different, it's like an art gallery, it's a different thing altogether,
This is more like
different
making
goals,
the art,
actually. Yes.
making the art and being with the artist. And
Yeah.
well, cooking in someone's home, a winery. What would be if you could say a typical day on one of your tours? What would you
Oh, I really can't, because it's too, I mean, in
too
in
varied?
Thailand and in Georgia, I guess in Thailand it's a market every morning,
Mhm.
because there's so many things that are completely unfamiliar to people. I mean, less so now, but when I started in 2009, Thailand was a place that was further away mentally and imaginatively than it is now. And that's not just technological changes, because many more people have traveled there. There's been more writing. So it was a little bit, woo, we're somewhere scary or somewhere far away. And I actually used to give people cheap little cell phones, so they could, and everybody would have everybody else's number, so they could call each other in case they got lost, because there wasn't Google Maps, and there wasn't, and they couldn't, the language has a different text. And
Yeah.
so they would be, because the whole goal was to have people not afraid, to have people move forward into things. So I take them to the market and I'd say, so we're shopping, who's going to buy the cilantro? Who's going to buy the
Oh my
pork?
gosh, I love that,
And I and
Naomi.
I
You
and I
really
give
get
them,
people
and
in.
I'd hand the money to say, ask her for and this is how you say thank you. And so, because the scary thing is, the first time you open your mouth trying to say something to someone and you're feeling, well, I don't know how to talk to this person.
Mhm.
But f- immigrants do it all the time, have to open their mouths and and it's good to be the person who doesn't know, again, to say, well, let me just take that risk, let me try and engage. And it's a small commercial transaction, but also let me do this. And so I would try and get people to, and they do that. It's nifty. It makes quite, who's going to go get the cabbages, whatever. And so by the end of the week, people are way more confident. It's very nifty. They just, oh, sure, I'll go. And people will notice, oh, look let's buy some of those donuts, and and they'll start to see the market as this wonderful resource that they can have access to just by
I
taking
love
that
that.
first step and engaging. Right? So for me, that's really what it's about. And in Georgia, it doesn't, for people coming from Europe and North America, it doesn't feel superficially as far away,
Mhm.
because it's a more European style, superficially place. But actually, again, the alphabet is, we're not literate in the alphabet. And, so it does, again, take engaging and noticing difference and being interested in difference as opposed to looking for what you know. You want to look for what you don't know. I mean, that's the exciting thing, right? What is that vegetable and how do people use that thing? And how does that, is that a sour plum or is that a sweet plum? And, what is that herb and how do they use that? This is really fascinating, so
Yeah,
that's
it sounds like a fabulous way to immerse.
really, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And I don't like to have a lot of people because you don't want to arrive at a big group. So the
Yeah.
most, I like 7 is the ideal number. Sometimes I have 8.
Uh-huh.
And then I have work with a friend. So my friend Tamar in Tbilisi and my friend Fern in Chiang Mai. So that because I'm not the expert, I'm just the interested outsider. And so we trust each other. And so we can work together and,
And how long are the trips? How many days
oh,
generally?
Georgia one's quite long, I guess 10 or 11 days.
Oh boy.
And yeah, and we're up in the mountains and we're in the valleys and we're in the wine country and we're in the plains near the Turkish border and kind of and then and in Thailand it's a week. It's a week. It's just in northern Thailand. So it's really sort of looking at the region and because there's so much cultural diversity and northern Thailand is surrounded by Laos and Burma and China's not that far away. So it's really there's a lot to discuss geopolitically. And I can geek out in many directions on those things. And people have questions and it's really fun to have people kind of get it. And I give people, everybody gets a paper map because I'm a big believer in paper maps. Because I think looking on your phone, you don't get context. You want to see where's the river? Where does it flow? Oh, and that connects to that. I see that's why there was trade there. Oh, and that's why those people came there. It's exciting. So it's sort of it's trying to see with many dimensions. And food is the entry point to it, but food's not the whole point. It's just it's the path.
The way to get in.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your cookbooks also. And I normally hold up one, but I had your book Salt, and it was so beautiful, Naomi, that I gave it away as a gift to a friend who's in the culinary business. So I don't have it to hold up, but could you hold up some of your books so listeners
Sure.
and
Well, here,
viewers can see?
Salt is the most recent. And then, I'm lucky to have really beautifully designed books. And then there's Persia, Taste of Persia, and
Okay, wait,
which
get those
is
up just a little bit more into the
okay.
camera. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Yeah.
And then an earlier one about Burma, which they sort of are a trio because they have lovely, look at that,
Yeah.
kind of
Gorgeous.
gorgeous,
Yeah.
lovely colors,
Together.
right?
And they're
And so
gorgeous inside. And you're a
yes,
food photographer. Did you do the photography for these?
I do. So there's the stack this way.
Ah, yeah.
I did all the location shots.
Uh-huh.
So the studio shots are done by the Burma and Salt were both photographed by Richard Young. And Persia was the food photography was done by Gentle and Hires, Andrea Gentle and Marty Hires. And yeah, it's lovely. And I just think I'm so lucky to be able to have photographs of place because again, I'm trying to
Yeah.
make the recipes make sense in a context. What's the context? Not because I find this delicious or that delicious or something, but because they're from that place and those people. And so it's really wonderful to have location shots in the book.
So
And
and,
there's more of
and
that
you also have
happening now.
stories about people, stories
And
about
stories. Yeah, yeah,
traditions,
sure.
and about place. So you pull all that together. How
Yeah.
do you approach blending storytelling with the recipes, and how do you think about that?
It's
What
really
how do you know
interesting.
what to include? Or yeah.
Well, I don't, I'm not a kind of make a list and then fill the slots in person. I'm more of a, oh, there's that story. And I might make a note and think, yeah, maybe. And then later on, a note about, oh, there's that story. And then at some point, the story might get written or the story might get started. I might be I'm at the same time going to be, say, checking, figuring out a recipe. And then if I'm writing it, I might think, oh, oh, actually, I could just write about her, some person I met,
Mhm.
in the context of this recipe. If the recipe isn't too long, there might be room in the head note. No, maybe she has to become a story instead. Oh, okay. It's really like
Pretty
that.
organic, it sounds
It,
like, as you
it,
put it
well,
together.
and it's actually very late on, and some of this organization stuff is really interesting. It was quite late on in the Persia book when I realized I was thinking about the structure of the book, chapters, and it's like, oh, I have to have a separate chapter for fruit because fruit plays such a role in the cooking, and it's not really jars of fruit so much as people do fruit leather, and anyway, and I needed to, and suddenly everything else fell into place. So I think there's this thing of just creating elements and seeing and thinking, oh yeah, I know how this is going to come together. This makes sense. And then suddenly, actually, no. And then you look freshly, and then suddenly, oh, click, this is how it should work. So there's a noodle chapter and there's a rice chapter, or there's not. There's just maybe a bread chapter, or and that's really, as you see what you have, as I see what I have, and then there's that feeling of appropriateness. That doesn't feel right. That feels forced. How can I have that not feel forced? Maybe I have to leave it out, right? I mean, that's the terrible thing. But when excise,
Oh, kill your darlings, yeah.
that was a good story, but nah, there's no, it's nah, or it
Mhm.
sounds too forced, or I haven't found the right tone, and I can't get it. So I have to leave it out. Right? I mean, this. Writing is like
Yeah,
that.
same
It's
sort
a
of thing.
winnowing always. I mean, yes, you have to do it, but you also have to be really, really direct with yourself and say, nah, um, that won't do.
Mhm, mhm.
Gone. I love you, but gone.
I love you, goodbye, yeah. Uh, Well, we're going to wrap up in a minute here, but here on the Women's Line, we're always looking for ways to make travel easier or more enjoyable or more doable. And I'm wondering if you might have any tips for culinary travelers.
Well, the first thing is don't be afraid. And the second thing is if you're, I would say in a sense, try if you're in a place like Thailand where there's street food, kind of try everything. What's the worst that can happen? You don't like it. And so you've wasted a little food, but portions are small. You're just having a little something. So, try it. And and I guess the other thing, long ago, somebody pointed out to me, I was going to Mexico for the first time, and a person I didn't know very well said, I got this piece of advice from somebody who traveled in Mexico a lot, and it's always worked for me. And that is make sure if you're having soup, that it's hot. So if you're having anything that's, make sure it's really hot. Well, in places like Thailand, food is generally cooked fresh in front of you, or it's a curry, but it's still made fresh that day. In Burma, the same. Um, Hot. So things just sitting around in a tepid way, if there's any meat in them, nah,
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but I think just move forward into it. Nothing's there to attack you. Um, and people, and if you don't like it, you shouldn't be there. Don't complain about a place. You chose to go there. You have a plane ticket home, then leave early. But don't complain to other people about a place. I don't understand that state of mind. I think it's like you have this privilege. Figure out how to enjoy it. That's your task. How fun. What a wonderful challenge.
Yeah, such a privilege.
Yeah.
Go for all of us now to be able to travel. Who knows what it'll be like in the future? I'm
Well, yes.
so grateful that we
Yes.
now at least are able to do that.
Yep.
Um, Naomi, thank you so much for talking to us today. This conversation has been really fun, and I would love to go on one of your trips. It sounds like the best way to get
Well,
into a culture.
well,
And thanks.
keep an eye on my website, and on Instagram. I usually post, 2 or 3 months ahead and say, "Hey, I'm doing a trip," so you'll find out about it there. And my website, it's just my name, and I'll put up when I know when I'm next going.
Yeah, I've seen your Instagram, those beautiful those beautiful photos on your Instagram account, and I've just enjoyed flipping through it. They're beautifully
Thanks.
done, and they make me so hungry. Um, okay, thanks to all you listeners for joining us on the Women's Eye podcast. You'll also find our books about inspiring women like Naomi um, on the website. 20 Women Storytellers is one of them, and 20 Women Change Makers is the other. And these are all about women who have figured out how to make a difference in the world, and they're out there doing it. They're very, very inspiring. Remember, you can rate and review the Women's Eye on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to our newsletter and YouTube channel. And again, thank you, Naomi. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, Laurie.
I'm Laurie McAndish King, and we're the Women's Eye. It's the world as we see it.